Hey guys, back on our YouTube video. Today it's going to be kind of a weird video. I don't normally do this, but a couple of my friends suggested I show this, so I figured I'll go ahead and do it since it's my day off. And this is all my different sharpeners, and I'm going to teach you how I use each one and certain things you can do with each one. Now, yes, I use a whetstone most of the time, but I also use a couple different sharpeners every once in a while because each sharpener is for a different task or a different blade. And like I said, I'm no expert at sharpening, but I have a good understanding of how to sharpen a good blade. Like one of my personal favorites is when people tell me that the Buck 119 and 110 are so hard to sharpen. I've never had a problem with them, and how I sharpen them is relatively easily. Set these to the side. And for this, I'm going to use my simple Harbor Freight whetstone. I've had this for a long time, and it's never let me down. Now, one of the things I can always recommend is when you freehand sharpening, sometimes you can get a little error. So what I do is a simple modification. I bolt this to my workbench, so that way it doesn't go anywhere, and I can have more control over the blade. Let me screw this in place. Come on, get in there. There we go. And then just simply screw it. And so that way it has nowhere else to go, and you can simply change it out. And for this, since I don't really need to use any rough grits, I'm just going to use the 600 grit on my sanding stone, on my sharpening stone. And simple, how I always sharpen my 119 is I always put it at a nice 90-degree angle, right at the corner of the stone, and just simply push it slowly all the way, and then turn it this way, right to the tip. So that way it gets a good even sharpness. It's kind of easier to show y'all this way. Let me adjust the camera a little bit so y'all can see better. Right there. So again, I simply put this part of the knife right on the corner of the stone and just gently pull downward, leaving it all the way out and then turning it right at the tip. So that way it gets a good even sharpening, and doing this just like that. Right at the tip. And doing the opposite side the same way. And I repeat this probably 5 or 6 times. And then, of course, there's dust on it from sharpening. I simply use a homemade strop that I built out of an old leather belt, and I simply do that. And there you go. That's how I normally sharpen my 119. And the Buck is the same way. I do the same thing. Make sure it's at the really corner of the whetstone, and then just gently pull it downward right at the tip and curve it so that way it gets a good even sharpen. And then the same thing on the opposite side. Right on the tip, and just gently do that. And then you just repeat the process a couple of times. There you go. And of course, my personal favorite is the paper test. And of course, strop it so that way there's no dust left on the blade from the stone. Minimum resistance. Kind of hard to do this on the camera. Just nice, clean, the way I like it. Yeah, sorry it's tearing at the ends because this paper's so long. See? There you go. And I'm just barely doing anything, and it's cutting right through it. That's how I always sharpen my knives. Now, be advised, I don't use this one very often. When I'm on the go, I normally carry my Smith stone. And again, I do the same thing, except since this one's got a handle on it, it makes it a lot easier for me to use. And I do the same thing, just make sure it's always on the edge, right to the tip. And then do the opposite side the same way. Always to the tip. I mean, it's very simple to do once you get the hang of it. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to risk messing up my knife. It's easy. If you learn, it's a lot easier. So there's an example of how to sharpen that one. And my 110. Next, I will definitely say, let's see, what can I pick next? Let's go with a little bit of something more curved. This is my gutting knife I've been working on. I haven't put the pins in it yet, but the reason why people normally don't purchase blades like this is because they think they're so hard to sharpen because it's got a curve like this. It's actually relatively easy to sharpen if you know what you're doing. Same thing, you put it right on the edge of the stone, and then just gently pull, and do it slow, and then go right out to the tip, just like that. Then you do the same thing on the opposite side. Right at the corner of the stone, and then just gently pull it, like that. And that's how you sharpen a simple knife, or if you want to make it a lot easier, you can use one of two things. You can either use a simple kitchen sharpener, or a ceramic sharpener. I've got both. And to do that, you do basically the same. You hold the edge right at it, and then you just gently pull on it, like that. Then you do the opposite side, same way, like that. Simple. And with a ceramic sharpener, same thing. You do it just like that, and then like that. You gotta let the sharpener do its job. You can't like put pressure on it like this and expect it to sharpen. Because that's what I've noticed a lot of people do is they'll put pressure like this and simply yank it like that. That's not how you sharpen a knife. You have to let the sharpener sharpen your knife. You can't just force it and put an edge on it because you'll end up ruining your knife that way. And so that's an example of how to sharpen a simple gutting knife. Next is, of course, is an overall classic, the overall butcher's knife. I use this quite a bit, and it's just an overall classic. Again, it's the same way, right at the corner of the stone, hold it just to the right 90 degree, and then just simply right tip. Then you do the same thing the other way, like that. And then you drop it. Get any dust or stuff off the edge. Then, of course, check it. Clean as a feather. And the same thing, like I said, same thing with this kind of sharpener. You can do this, just like you see in the movies. You can do this too. It'll still hold a sharp edge. Same thing with a ceramic sharpener. And just drop it. There you go. Simple enough. And let's see, what else can I use an example now? Another thing I gotta mention is, I know these are cheap whetstones. A lot of people think the quality of the stone matters. That is true. But you can also do the same thing with cheap stones too if you know what you're doing. The quality of the stone most of the time doesn't matter. You can use a cheap stone, you can use an expensive stone, or again, you can use another expensive stone, or you can use something like this. It all depends on how good you are sharpening. You can use any kind of sharpener you want. It all depends on how good you are on using it. Like these two are Arkansas stones that I use for my expensive knives, such as my knives that I use for unboxing videos that dull quite a bit. I resharpen them on these types of stones. I put a little bit of oil on them, and then I do the same thing with them. Just simply go right to the tip, and then do the same thing going back. That's all you have to do. And it puts a nice, good, clean edge right back on it. And another thing people are always wondering is when you sharpen knives like this is an old school butcher's knife. It's got a decently thick blade, but it's very flexible. And I've noticed when a lot of people try to sharpen these knives, they'll accidentally bend it downward and end up ruining the finish on the knife. That does happen. And how you sharpen a knife this thin without just doing it like this is very simple as well. You hold the tip of the knife right here, so that way it keeps it from flexing. And again, right at the corner of the stone. And then just simply let the sharpener do its job. Then you do the same thing the opposite way. Same thing. Then, of course, drop it. Then test it. There you go. See? And then, of course, another thing is a classic Bowie knife. This is my Carville Hall Bowie knife that I got from a flea market. And this is another item I want to show how to sharpen. Again, relatively simple. What makes this one easier to sharpen? This one's already got a sharpening piece right here that you can simply start on. Because I notice when a lot of people sharpen knives like this, they accidentally end up dinging the guards with the stones, which is common. That does happen. But all you have to do is very simple. Hold it like this, right at the corner, and then just let the stone sharpen your knife. Same thing on the opposite side. Right on the side, like that. Simple enough. Then you strop it. Just like that. Clean as a feather. And then here's another one. Now, many people don't do this anymore, but I still do, and that is I sharpen my scissors. These are my left-handed chrome Brazil scissors. I use these quite a bit. I use these for leather work, for cutting labels, for packages. I mean, these are some good scissors, and I do sharpen them. And I notice that's another thing is people just normally throw them away. They don't actually take the time to sharpen them. And sharpening these is relatively easy. As you see, they're chisel ground where it's got an edge on this side and it's flat on this side. And it's still easy to sharpen because it's got a simple edge right here. And same thing, you hold it right along the edge at a nice 90 degree, and then you just simply right out to the tip. And luckily with this one, you don't have to work both sides. You just have to work one side. Right out to the tip. And there you go. And then with the other side, same thing. You work right at the tip. Right at the tip of the stone, and then just simply let it do its job. There you go. And then all I'll do is just simply put them together. That's simple. Phew, it's getting hot in my room. Well, that's mainly it. The only other thing I'll show y'all is a simple thing. A Mora. One of my favorite knives. I use this all the time. And again, it does dull. Every knife is going to dull if you don't take care of it. There's no such thing as a edge that lasts forever, because every once in a while, you are going to have to sharpen it if you use it. And with this knife, same thing. Right at the edge of the stone, and then just simply do that. Right at the tip. And again, you can use this kind of sharpener to sharpen it. Same thing. Right out to the edge. And you can use a whetstone. You can use an Arkansas stone. Use a ceramic sharpener. And I will admit the ones that I use the most is definitely this one, because this one's always in my pocket on the go with me. And every once in a while, I do need to resharpen my blade while I'm on the go. And same thing. You can sharpen any kind of knife with a sharpener you have. Like, yes, you can use a sharpener like this on a knife like this. You just have to be very careful. And you just simply do that. Then do the opposite side. Same way. And then, of course, another of my favorite is pocket knife sharpening, because not many people do this anymore. This is a classic little fruit knife. And again, sharpening this is relatively simple, but given how small this is, this thing really doesn't need to be sharpened that much. So for that, all you need to use is a nice little whetstone like this. And sadly, I misplaced my knife oil, but you can use the stone dry, but I just don't recommend that. You just simply do that right on the edge. Just like that. And then do that. And check it. Piece of cake. And then, of course, one of my favorite knives I've sharpened the most is definitely my Victorinox. This one's one my dad gave me, and I still use it. I've sharpened that quite a bit. And I've used this on multiple different sharpeners. I've used this on it. And this one, I hold it with my thumb just like this, right at the 90 degree, and just simply let the stone do its job. There you go. Piece of cake. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's hard to do when this paper's so flimsy. There we go. Yeah, that one needs to be sharpened up a little more. Now, I guess this is a good example since this does need to be sharpened a little bit up more. When you're using rough grits on stones, and a lot of people don't understand, is using the rough grit doesn't just put an edge back on your knife. It puts an edge to be sharpened back on your knife. Since this is a coarse grit, use the same thing. Just gently do that. Right at the tip, and then push it forward. Same on the opposite side. Right at the tip, and push it forward. And then flip to the fine. Do the same thing. Right at the side. And you get some improvement. But then again, I use this quite a bit. There we go. Piece of cake. Anyway, that's my main point, is you can sharpen any kind of knife with any kind of sharpener. As long as you know what you're doing, you can do it. You don't need to buy fancy sharpeners like what I have. You can do good just with this one stone or just with this one. I mean, that's my main point to this video is, it doesn't matter how many sharpeners you have. If you have just one cheap Harbor Freight whetstone, you can get a good working edge on your knife as long as you learn how to do it. So that's my main point to this video, and these are all my sharpeners that I normally use. The only sharpener I don't use very often is this one right here. This is my electric sharpener, and mainly because the belts for this are hard to get. The only way I use this is on my axes and my machetes, because that's different. But on knives, I do it all mostly by hand. I never use my belt sander to put an edge back on something unless it is so badly worked on that it needs a new edge put back on it. And, of course, another thing I could say is what a lot of people use is a simple file. You can do that, yes, but it only puts a temporary edge on your knife. You can simply use a flat file and put an edge on a knife without a problem. But it's going to leave a rough-looking edge on your knife, and you'll have to smooth that out so it cuts cleanly. So that's my main point to this video, is you can use any kind of sharpener to sharpen a knife. Or a pair of scissors, or a gutting knife, or a butcher's knife. It doesn't matter. You can use any kind of sharpener as long as you know how to do it. That's why I always say when you're looking into getting into the knife business, or knife collecting in general, or using one, and wanting to resharpen it, do your homework, and make sure you learn how to sharpen your whatever knife you may have. Because you can have a knife of all different kinds. I mean, you can have a simple little Victorinox, or a large Bowie knife. But that's my main point to this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. And as always, stay sharp.